Hi everyone! I hope you're all doing well. I'm really excited to be back this week with another video essay. I always have fun making these and doing research. Today we're going to be talking about what is a big discussion on the internet right now, and that's big picture biopics, namely the ones that have dropped on Netflix recently. BioPics, which I use half-heartedly / with air quotations because a biopic is a movie dramatizing the life of a particular person. I feel like when a piece of media becomes so saturated, it becomes less of a biopic and more of just...
It feels like a movie.
Necessary disclaimer time, yay! These are my personal observations and consequential opinions. You do not have to agree with me. In fact, I'm totally down to have an interesting conversation in the comments below. But let's just keep it respectful because some people have not been doing that.
Excuse me,
And without further ado, let's get into it. Kicking it off with Netflix's recently #1 charting and 3-hour film, Blonde. Blonde was directed by this dude, Andrew Dominic. This is the same man who, in a recent interview with reporter Christina Newland, said this. She's somebody who's become this huge cultural thing in a whole load of movies that nobody really watches, right? Does anyone watch Marilyn Monroe movies? And then he proceeded to make a whole movie about Marilyn Monroe. Now, one of the main criticisms the film has been getting is regarding its historical accuracy. That's because while the work is, according to Dominic, all fiction, it certainly doesn't act like it. The Blonde movie is actually based entirely on a fictional book by Joyce Carol Oates, and that was released in 1999. While Marilyn Monroe was the subject of the book, many aspects of the book were fabricated for the purpose of storytelling. President John F. Kennedy is of course included in the film because why not? As is her relationship with brothers Cass and Eddie Jr., which never happened. It was actually only speculated that she might have dated one of them at some point. Funnily enough, the director of the film claimed that he wasn't actually interested in the book. He said he was interested in telling a story of how childhood drama shapes an adult's perception of the world. Now, if that's what you really wanted to make a film about, then sure. But why then did he need Marilyn Monroe to tell that story, when it just as easily could have been anyone else or anyone fictional? And if it's not about the book, then why name the film the
exact same thing
as the book? I'll let you take a guess. The answer might shock you, but it's money. I know. I was just as shocked as you were. Because of course people are way more likely to watch a film about an adult's perception of the world when you slap Marilyn Monroe on it. The name Marilyn Monroe kind of just gets perpetually milked for clout throughout history and still today, which ties into society's kind of everlasting and weird obsession with her. In very recent pop culture history, you may remember the fun event / scandal of Kim Kardashian wearing Marilyn Monroe's dress to some rich people Hollywood event. One of the ones where they all play dress up, I think the Met Gala, and she permanently ruined that dress. According to Netflix, Dominic boldly reimagines the tumultuous private life of the Hollywood legend. It's just more of a general social commentary about an adult's perception of the world. Adrian Brody, who plays Monroe's third husband, while recommending the movie, said that if you're really a fan of Marilyn, you'd probably want to understand a bit more about her life and her reality. But remember guys, it's not about Marilyn, it's not about Blonde, it's about the social commentary aspect of it all. And Ana de Armas, who plays the leading woman herself, said that we're telling her story from her point of view. I am making people feel what she felt. But once again, get it out of your head, this is not about Marilyn Monroe.
adult's perception of the world.
So do you see why this is paradoxical? I forgot to plug my microphone. In addition to beating the dead horse that is the fictionalized concept of Marilyn Monroe, the film also lays it pretty thick when it comes to political propaganda that simply had no real reason to exist in the movie. Remember when I said this biopic made up shit that never happened? Well, this is probably the most disturbing example of that. And by this, I mean the film's graphic abortion scenes, plural. Okay, so First of all, this was once again speculation, but unfortunately this speculation manifests itself as one of the biggest plot points in the movie, if not the biggest plot point of the movie. Blonde includes several close-up shots of a fetus as it develops in Marilyn's stomach, one of which is pointedly shown while she calls the studio to arrange her abortion. On the way to the procedure, Marilyn somberly is clad in a black dress, and she begs her driver, in a car strongly resembling a funeral hearse, to turn around after seeing a stop sign. Her pleas continue on the operating table but are ignored by the doctors until an injection lulls her into a twilight sleep. What follows is a close-up of her cervix. Yeah, there's shots from the POV of inside her vagina, before she dreams of fleeing from the doctors and saving a baby from danger as the sweetly crooning song Bye Bye Baby plays. And then she proceeds to regret this decision for the entire rest of the movie because she's so tormented by this abortion that she later can't perform. And after her famous Gentlemen Prefer Blondes performance, she whispers to herself, "For this, you killed your baby." And when she later gets pregnant in the film again, she's elated. Yay, baby! Yay, fictional baby! And she has a full-on conversation with her fetus, where her fetus is like, "Are you going to kill me again?"
You won't hurt me this time, will you? Not do what you did the last time? You're not the same baby. You're this baby. That was me. It's always me.
For something trying so hard to be taken seriously, it sounds ridiculous, and that's because it is. All jokes aside, this is groundbreaking cinema, and we should be thanking Andrew Domino. So for something that has no real evidence of existing, much less plaguing the actress with lifelong crippling guilt that is a big reason why she killed herself, the film somehow makes itself mainly an anti-choice propaganda film. Not only does that whole narrative take a complete turn from the actual woman that it's clearly exploiting for clout, but the way it's portrayed is also just kind of comically absurd and just a little bit foul. There's literally a shot of a bunch of floating fetuses. Feti, and like graphic imagery of her miscarried fetus dying. Moreover, Marilyn is repeatedly targeted and assaulted by men throughout the film. Now, of course, it's common knowledge that in real life Marilyn was exploited by the industry and the terrible men in it. But I feel like that doesn't warrant the multiple graphic scenes that earn this film an NC-17 rating, which is very rare, like a lengthy extreme close-up of a drugged-up Marilyn Monroe filleting President Kennedy while he's on the phone in a hotel room, or the scenes where a studio executive known as Mr. Z graphically rapes her when she visits his office about a part. I'm actually, like, this is giving me gas to talk about this. And multiple sex scenes with the fictionalized brothers threesome that she was never in. And she frequently refers to the men in her relationships or life as daddy. No additional comment will be provided. So for Dominic to have made all the choices that he did, and then for this film to be branded as feminist, is kind of a freaking joke in my opinion.
One of the things that I think gets misunderstood about Marilyn Monroe or Norma Jean is that very intelligent, very thoughtful.
How funny that you would advertise that her actual talent and intelligence were finally given the main stage and the attention it deserved in a film that did not do that at all. She also said that she found the film to be the most unapologetic and feminist take on her story that she'd ever seen. But then again, this is the same woman who claims to have literally communicated with and been haunted by the ghost of Marilyn Monroe on set. So I feel like that's everything you need to know about Ana de Armas. Christy Lemire writes that when she's not crying, she's naked. Frequently, she's both, as well as bloody. And in nearly every situation, she's either a pawn or a victim, a fragile little angel searching for a father figure to love and protect her. There's this scene after her miscarriage where Marilyn is surrounded by the paparazzi who are just like swarming her and all taking photos and reveling in her misery. And I think that's kind of hilarious. That's actually hilarious. Because it's supposed to be like a woke social critique of how Hollywood tormented this woman for its own gain and profit, and it exists in a film that's created by Hollywood and tormenting this woman for profit. And to cap off this discussion, I will let you in on a fun fact. The ending of the film is just kind of a drawn out and silent portrayal of Marilyn committing suicide. And they filmed that scene in the exact hotel where she died, in the exact room where she died, on the exact bed where she died. You can call it commitment, but I will call it an instant ticket to hell. Final verdict on Blonde. Let that poor woman rest, please. Moving on, let's talk about subject number 2, the Dahmer series. So, first off, this had the most watched debut of any Netflix show. I don't really have a point to add to that, I guess it just surprised me. And since I began scripting this video a couple weeks ago, the show has now become Netflix's second biggest show of all time, right after Stranger Things. So, safe to say it's getting quite the spotlight. Here's the thing. I don't think the series is all bad. Don't get me wrong, it's more bad than it is good, but I can understand the defense that people are making for it. On the one hand, a show like this can spread a lot more light on the actual victims of Jeffrey Dahmer, and it showcases how awful he is, which is a good thing. But on the other hand, this show not only gives a big Hollywood spotlight to another mass murderer again, but it also actively disrespects the victims' families and the wishes they had regarding the show, and ultimately, I think that matters more than anything else. One viral on Twitter shows Netflix's reenactment of Rita Isbell's confronting of Dahmer after he killed her brother, placed side by side with the real court footage from 1992. However, Isbell herself told Insider that she was deeply disturbed by watching an actress who looked just like her perform her most wrenching moments. Netflix also never contacted her about the show or asked for her consent. So, she said, "I'm not telling anyone what to watch. I know true crime media is huge right now, but if you're actually curious about the victims, my family, the Isbells, are pissed about the show. It's re-traumatizing over and over again. And for what? How many movies, shows, and documentaries do we need?" And I guess that's my overarching point. And more families of his victims have continued to speak out against the show since its air. But, so let's pretend for a second. Let's pretend that this show really did exist for the purpose of bringing attention to his victims' stories. Alright, clean slate. The first 5 episodes of the show are Dahmer-centric, and it isn't until the 6th episode that one of his victims gets a really fleshed out backstory in the show. So, not stellar work, if that was really Netflix's goal. It's a complicated thinking process, really, that, you know, show called Dahmer gonna be about Dahmer. In the 6th episode, the Dahmer series does exactly that, but it doesn't maintain the approach for the entirety of its season. Even in the final act of silence, the show can't help itself, ultimately leaving us with a nasty image of Dahmer sitting down to eat a freshly cooked organ that once resided in his victim, Tony's body. Great! If you really want to know all about Dahmer's victims, then I have a great suggestion for you, and it is called Google.com. Okay, sure, sometimes we don't want to just sit down and Google and research because we care, but we don't care that much. Let's be real, how many people watch this show and what percentage of them then actually went and did research about the victims? I'm willing to bet it's not that many. But that's okay, because there are lots of mediums other than Google that can entertain while also informing us. In this day and age especially, there's tons of ways you can learn about true crime in an interesting but more respectful manner. You've got podcasts, YouTube video essays, and documentaries, and my best nerd friend recommends Wendigoon as one of those creators. It kind of reminds me of the Pamela Anderson series on Hulu, in that the ultimate message can be a perfectly reasonable and even good one. Yes, serial killers are bad, and so is the way that Hollywood and society treats women. But without the consent of Pamela, or in this case the victims' families, just immediately the series put a bad taste in my mouth. I'm aware that's a pretty great setup for a cannibalism joke. How are you gonna market yourself as giving a platform to these people who don't want to have the platform about them in the first place? There's also like a newly spawned mass of people online who are like feeling bad for Jeffrey Dahmer, and or are praising his looks in a way that's probably gonna sound familiar to those of you who are around for the Zac Efron Ted Bundy casting, another great film by Netflix. Guys, okay, I get it. Okay, I don't get it, but like, I get it, like Evan Peters, there's a delicacy. But some of you seriously need to learn to detach the actor from the role because you're starting to freak me out. Also, it makes you wonder why Hollywood is casting objectively okay looking serial killers as really attractive big faces in Hollywood like Evan Peters or Ross Lynch. And why do you think they're doing that? Huh? You just do. And I know it's not the show's fault that it spawned like a fan base for Jeffrey Dahmer, but like, isn't it just a little bit though? Okay, and do you know how Netflix has those fun little like categorizations for films on their carousels, and one of them is LGBTQ plus films? Take a guess where this is going. Netflix genuinely put this show at the top of its LGBTQ plus media carousel. And naturally, a product like this was bound to over dramatize some of its events, like the scene where he's gobbling down all the blood bags. In real life, he was drinking from a vial of blood, which he actually detested, whereas in the show, it's done like this. I will say that this show is way more true to real life than Blonde was, like by miles. True to story-wise, I'd say this show's like a 4.5 out of 5. But what's bound to happen in a dramatization like this is that it's gonna get dramatized. So mainly the film takes from these events that did actually happen, but it just kind of turns them out Hollywood shock value style. Not to say that what he did wasn't foul and vile and disgusting and every other synonym that you could think of, but for example, while it's reported that he did at some point pass out sandwiches around the building that might have contained the meat of one of his victims, the way it's portrayed in the show is a one-on-one scene with Glenda, which didn't happen in that way or really at all. In line with the booming fan response and weird monetization of serial killers, in the wake of the show, sorry, this is truly terrible. The cult collectibles company auctioned off a pair of Dahmer glasses that he wore in prison, and they did that for the small price of $150,000. Also, way back when people even went to the Oxford buildings after the actual murders to try and collect souvenirs, but the buildings have since been demolished. And so, here's another funny, you guys. Netflix has since revealed that it'll be releasing a follow-up Dahmer series to the Dahmer series. Yay! Isn't that just so funny and convenient? Listen to me, guys. This is not about milking a serial killer's name again, immediately after we just already did it. It's about shedding a light on how terrible what he did was and how terrible he was. Again, as someone who loves the horror genre, the fictional kind, society's obsession with continuing to make a spectacle out of serial killers makes about as much sense to me as, oh, I don't know, society's obsession with making a spectacle out of Marilyn Monroe. You do have to wonder at some point if continuing to immortalize these serial killers in film after film after film is sending a good message to crazy people. Don't work hard chasing an impossible dream. Why suffer under the system when you could be a serial killer? Now you can live in the Hollywood Hall of Fame forever. Vanity Fair's Richard Lawson commented that while the series respectfully mourns and inveighs all of the loss that surrounds him, it also turns Dahmer into a hideously immortal thing, an icon. So my final verdict on the Dahmer series is, why does this exist? And also not super cool about the way you handled the situation regarding the victims' families. Yeah. So what did we learn here? If you're a woman and you want to be immortalized in pop culture, then all you have to do is suffer your whole life under the industry and continue to suffer under the industry after you die. And if you're a man, you just gotta murder. Okay, but a show like this highlights what was wrong with the police system, what's still wrong with it, and brings attention to how we need to come together to stand against it and stop things like this from happening again. Okay, so true. Then how come there was literally a serial killer in Kansas City who was targeting and killing black women? The police were equally as ineffective and it barely scraped any headlines. If that was part of the show's goal, then yeah, that's also failing. No. I feel like the actual lesson here is that Netflix knows what sells. But you know what they say? Don't stop beating the dead horse if the dead horse is still selling. And if you're gonna hate watch them, then there's a way you can do that without directly contributing to Netflix. Anyways, I gotta go to my minimum wage paying job, so time to cut it off. I hope you liked this video. I thank you for watching to the end. Love you so much. Kiss kiss. I will see you all soon. Bye.